Hey, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to episode 4 of the Groovy Podcast. Today is 26th of June, and I'm Peter Ledbrook, podcasting from merry old England. So, I'm joined today by Baruch Sadogursky of JFrog, the company behind the Artifactory Repository Manager and Bintray, which is a public social platform for hosting binaries, and been making some news in the Groovy ecosystem recently. So, Baruch, thanks you for joining me. How are you?
Thank you for having me, Peter. I'm actually very excited to be on Groovy Podcast. It's an honor, and everything is good.
Ah, great. It's great having you. And I hope I'm not mangling your name too much.
No, that's almost perfect. I actually couldn't ask for more. That's impossible to ask for more.
Super. Thank you for being so polite. Okay, so it's only been a week since the last episode, so there isn't an awful lot on the news front, except some very, 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 very big news, for me at least, which is that Grails in Action 2nd edition should have gone to press last Friday. Whoa, we're nearly there.
Whoa.
Yes. Thank you. So, yes, Glenn and myself will probably be going on to very, very long holidays for a while. So, yeah, that's good.
Tell me about this early edition state of the book. So, because I have a feeling that I won't name any names, but I actually mentioned Groovy in Action 2nd edition is an early edition for a reason, because that's the only way you can add updates without actually having an obsolete book. So once it's an early edition, you can keep going forever, adding new features, Groovy 3 and what's not, and it's still not published, so it's still okay to change.
Well, I don't want to say anything, but yes, actually, it's. I think that's why the lean publishing systems work quite well, because you're publishing online, you can continually update them relatively easily. But it is early access because there is supposed to be, at some point in the future, the actual publication of the book. So actually, I mean, to be fair, Groovy in Action's made great progress recently. So I think they're looking to come out in paper, in hardback or paperback this year, later this year. I don't know when exactly.
Yeah, so actually, as I mentioned, maybe it shouldn't be. Maybe this early edition in Manning is just the lean publishing of Manning. Let's keep it this way. Let's edit. Let's keep it up to date. Let's just
yeah. But at some point, you need to have a printed version.
Okay.
People want printed versions of these things.
Still,
to look at.
You think so?
Well, until you can get technical books on Kindle. Looking nice, then I'm not really a fan. I don't like reading off LCD screens, and many people just like the physical aspect of books anyway. It's much easier to take to bed with you to read, or once you've got away from the computer for a bit. So there are many reasons why people still favor physical books over, say, reading off an iPad or of their laptop or computer screen.
Yeah.
I feel personally Kindle, the e-ink, electronic ink, is a good substitute, but the Kindle itself isn't a suitable form factor for technical books. So when that changes, then maybe the publishing system will change more as well, especially for technical books, because they do. Technology does keep changing. To be honest, though, the authors like to have an end point as well. we want to be finished at some point, so that we can
don't think about it too much, because you are going to start the 3rd edition in 2 months.
Not on the cards at the moment, so we shall see. Anyway, so getting back to the news. The Gradle Summit, it's the 2nd one, I believe, has just finished, and in the show notes I have a link to a summary by John Engelman. So I don't know, Baruch, were you at the Gradle Summit? I
No,
assume some JFrog.
Fred went there and gave some talks, did an introduction and talk about Bintray to prepare the audience to the announcement about the Gradle plugins portal that you mentioned last week. So our Fred represented JFrog there.
Okay, cool. And yeah, I will be coming back to the Gradle plugin portal in the interview stage. So yes, so that seems to be going pretty well, the Gradle Summit. So expect to see another edition next year. Also, it's actually going to be news related to Bintray somewhat. Versions 0.4 and 0.4.1 of Bintray Gradle plugin were released this week, both of them, and without release notes. So can you please tell your technical team to actually populate the release notes when they release it?
Yes. Actually, we got a couple of subsequent requests from the same people. Goes like, okay, what's new in 0.4.4? You know what? Forget it. What's new in 0.4.1?
So you're waiting for the stable release before you actually fill in the
No, we will address it probably later today or tomorrow, and we will publish release notes finally. So the big news are compatibility with Gradle 2, compatibility with the Gradle portal, but there are a bunch of small features and bug fixes that also came through.
Okay, cool. And actually, my particular interest recently was whether you could publish to one of the generic Bintray repositories. So I suspect that's still not possible. It's geared towards Maven style.
Yeah, it's still going to the Maven repo because this is kind of a little bit bigger than the scope of this minor release, small and minor release. So probably we will implement it because there is a demand for it, but I hope in the next version.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great because at the moment the Lazybones plugin uses its own upload task. Not terribly difficult to implement, but it'd be nice to use just rely on the standard one for doing that. So that's cool. That's been released. As I mentioned, if you listened last week, then you'll know that I had perhaps rashly said I was going to allocate half an hour to an hour a day working on the Groovy documentation. So you may be interested on what kind of progress I've made. Well, I didn't quite do it every day. As I think I said in a blog post recently, I've done it about 50% of the time, which I feel is pretty good going. Still not too much content to show for it. Still trying to learn ASCII doc, dealing with tables and including source snippets. It's a very powerful system. Currently just hit a nasty issue with tables and the bitwise OR operator, but hopefully we can get that fixed sometime in the near future.
But because
anyway,
this is the row separator.
Yes, exactly. As I want Groovy to change the bitwise OR operator to a different character just so I can do the documentation for it. But anyway, so I have been continuing to work on that, but I also at the weekend did a blog post. I will put a link in the show notes, but gives you a brief introduction to how to get started with working on the Groovy documentation.
This is very big because working on documentation is one of the best entry points to an open source project, right? So yeah, you cannot go and be a committer for Groovy core just because you want to help Groovy. But writing documentation, snippets, code examples, this is something that almost everyone that knows a little bit of Groovy can contribute. It's very important to have this low barrier entry to the open source project, and your post helps it a great deal.
Yeah, I mean, that's my hope. And also, it's when you're writing about something, you often, because you think about corner cases and other issues, you actually start to learn more about whatever you're writing about. So Groovy in this case. So you'll think about, okay, I can do this, but hold on a second. What if somebody wants to do something else with the bitwise OR operator? Will that work? So then you test it and or ask the Groovy developers what's going on and that kind of thing. So I think that's an interesting way of learning about any piece of technology whether it's a language or a framework. I've been looking at Ratpack today, and I was just thinking, if I allocate some time to working on the Ratpack documentation, that will force me to learn more about the framework itself, and then be better.
This is something worth learning, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Ratpack looks like amazing framework. The ideas are right, the implementation is even better. I enjoy it very much, and I enjoy seeing it progressing and catching momentum. This is it.
Yeah, I mean, I like it as a lightweight web framework. I hesitate to call it a framework even. It's a little bit like Gradle, and it wants to be a tool rather than something that forces too many opinions on you.
Yeah, and this is for a reason, because if you want a good web framework in Groovy ecosystem, you already have one, right?
Yeah. So if you, especially, I mean, Grails is very good for the sort of traditional web app type of stuff. But I think that's been, Ratpack, the design of Ratpack is heavily influenced by Luke's experience with Gradle. So a lot of the philosophy of Gradle is in Ratpack. The only issue I have with Ratpack at the moment is it's a bit inaccessible because the documentation is weak. Therefore, actually contributing to the documentation would help quite a lot.
Yeah, that's a problem with a lot of open source projects, because people enjoying writing code and much less enjoying writing documentation for the code.
Yeah, there's that. It's also Ratpack is, in essence, a very flexible web framework, and flexibility generally comes at a cost to some degree of accessibility. So I think when it reaches 1 and a lot of the documentation is up and running, and people can easily understand it, it'll go really well. I think it will be very popular as an alternative lightweight framework. Anyway, so just talked about my blog post on the Groovy documentation. Cedric Champeau, core Groovy committer, followed that up partly because I was hassling him how to set up Groovy in the IntelliJ. He said that other people have asked him as well. So he created a screencast showing you how to set up the Groovy project, the source code for it in IntelliJ. And you just have to be aware of, don't use the Gradle tooling in IntelliJ because it adds things that actually break the project.
Yes.
So
you need to go with Gradle idea, which is actually documented in the README in Groovy core top level README file. So this is it's like they have this contributing part which more or less consists on one phrase. Check out Gradle idea, you're done.
Yeah, I was told that you need to run Gradle jar as well. And yeah, when I opened the project in IntelliJ, it actually asks, do you want to enable Gradle tooling? Because then you can use the Gradle sidebar.
Yes.
But as soon as you enable it, it messes up the project completely. So it's just these little things.
I can go ranting at least half an hour now about Gradle support in IntelliJ IDEA.
Okay, we're best
3 years ago, I opened the ticket in Utrecht, and for a very long time it was the most voted feature in IntelliJ IDEA, and well, sad story.
Well, I think it looks like it's made very good progress with the support for the DSL and the Gradle sidebar, but I don't know if there's, why there's still a difference between Gradle idea and importing as a Gradle project. But then, especially with something like Groovy, it's a complex build, so I think the IntelliJ guys and the Gradle guys will be, working to improve that even further. But it's interesting how, I'm still not so much of an IDE fan. I will use the IDE, but I don't feel I have to use the IDE, whereas some people just don't like moving outside of the IDE. So
yeah, that will be me.
For any language, for any tool, for any library, IDE support is like the #1 requirement for many people.
Yeah, that actually will be me. I love my code completion, and I love my syntax highlighting and errors highlighting, and
Hey, you can get syntax highlighting and code completion in Vim.
yes.
Admittedly, not
I,
intelligent code
yeah,
completion, but
no,
it
but
still
with
works.
Vim, I'm constantly using Vim. It's always open on my desktop because I don't know how to exit.
I saw a joke recently about Vim. I wish I could remember what it is, but it's around the fact that it takes people. People have Vim open because they can't work out how to get out of it. I did spend a lot of time trying to work out how to do that. Dear. Anyway, so that's most of it for the news. If you are interested in other little tidbits from the past week, or any other week for that matter, I definitely recommend checking out both Guillaume's weekly sort of newsletter for Groovy. I'll post a link for that, and also Jacob Mikkelson's Grail's Diary, which also comes out every week, every few weeks, with more sort of Grail-specific news. Okay, so I'll put a link to that as
Guillaume's
well.
persistence is quite impressive. He's managed to issue this weekly newsletter every week for quite a period now, which is
Yeah,
unusual because usually you start, okay, I will do it every week, and then, okay, every week and a half, and then you go from there, and once in a month
yeah,
you have something.
yeah, and it's a surprising amount of work. You need to allocate that block of time during the week to work on it, to collate all the news items as well. Just following the news is hard enough as it is. So big props to him and to Jakob. Admittedly, those are the two main sources of my own news about the Groovy ecosystem. So that is it for the new stuff. So going on to the interview. Right. Hello, Baruch, again. Just can you start with just saying a little bit about yourself, your background? You work for JFrog. What do you do for those guys? How long have you worked for them? That kind of thing.
Yeah, so all of the JFrog, let's say, founders and early employees, we are all come from a services company when we were working together for a significant number of years, doing services consulting around Java stuff and a lot of build and continuous integration stuff. It was early days for those concepts. And we build our own framework around Ant that does kind of continuous integration and dependency management in the days where there was only unusable Maven 1 as an alternative. But then Maven 2 was released, and we were very passionate about it. And then we discovered that it's almost unusable without having your own in-house Maven proxy. This was a very significant demand for our customers, which were big enterprises, and then we just wrote kind of a very small and minimal tool for them to use, and it got its own life, and we discovered that this is a critical piece of every continuous integration and continuous delivery process, and that's how JFrog was born. We started the backyard of Frederic Simon, our CTO, and then we moved to one room office, and the rest is history. Now we are around 60 people based in Israel and California. So all the development is in Israel and California. It's like our field branch with field engineers and the sales guys. I'm a developer advocate with JFrog, which basically means two things. I'm hanging out with our real hardcore technical guys. I'm writing some code around our tools more from the user perspective, like plugins and extensions and scripts around our tools. And then I talk about it, for example, now.
Yeah, cool. Yes, I'm being an ex-developer advocate myself. I know how underappreciated we all are as well sometimes, but it's a great role to have. So I'm interested, was Artifactory first, or did it come out at a similar time to Nexus?
It was first by a relatively significant time frame. If I remember right, more than a year before Nexus was released. Of course, Nexus has the advantage of being coming from the same home from Maven itself, so it was like a default stack, taking Maven and Nexus together. That only makes SaaS works harder to get a better product as an alternative, so people will actually want to make an action and switch. And I think we did a good job, and we feel a very strong commitment in the market and the community to Artifactory, and looks good for us.
I mean, I have to say, I think it's great that I've used it when I've needed to test something with a private repository manager, and you just download it and run it, and boom, you've got something there with a minimum of effort. And I think, getting to that stage is very important, because people are time poor typically, so you don't want to make it hard work for them. So any tool that takes the effort to make it simple to get started does win in the end, I think.
Yeah, and the interesting part is, of course, the customizations, because the continuous delivery, continuous integration, and project automation, they are very different. And we're here on the same page with Hans and the Gradle guys, which is exactly the opposite approach of Maven, which tries to say every Java project is the same. We believe that every project is different. So it's about extensions, and it's about integration. And you can take a piece of very simple Groovy code written in very convenient DSL and extend the REST API to your need, or answer to any kind of an event inside the repository itself. So you can add any type of checks or cleanups or schedule tasks, extend the API, and doing what's not, and all in very simple Groovy scripts. So this is also a very big game changer.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, that actually goes, mentioning Hans, it goes to one of my questions, which is JFrog just seems to have been involved with the Groovy ecosystem, certainly for a while now, but also Gradle. I've seen your booth next to the Gradleware booth, I think a couple of times at Java 1. And I know you guys talk to each other. So, how long has that relationship been going, and do you know where that came from? What was the driver behind it?
So our interest in Gradle sparked in very early days of Gradle, where we still were working in the services company I mentioned, because with all the revolutionary approach that Maven introduced, we still felt that it lacks a lot of functionality, and of course a lot of flexibility that our customers demand from the environment. So we constantly looked for alternative. Builder back in the times was an interesting alternative, and Gradle as well. And we were betting quite strongly on Gradle from very early days. And being as very early adopters, we came to know Hans. And with JFrog, with Artifactory, the synergy between those two tools is very, very significant, because they actually complete each other, and Gradle actually cannot exist without a repository for its dependencies, and Artifactory uses the artifacts that are produced from build tools, and of course provides the artifacts to the build tools. So that's a perfect synergy, and the ideas and the concepts and how we see project automation, continuous integration, and continuous delivery are exactly the same. So it's only natural for us to work together. We have great Artifactory plugin for Gradle. Gradle has great support for Artifactory as a repository. We enjoy, and the colors are the same. We both are green. So.
So when are the two companies going to merge?
Well, this is not a question that I can comment on. But we're truly great friends, both on personal and technical level. That's true.
Yeah, and of course, there's the you mentioned it during the news cycle. Bintray is the source of the Gradle plugins now. In fact, is it JCenter stores the actual plugin binaries, but you also add the information to a Gradle plugins repo in Bintray.
Well, yes, I remember you commenting it last week that it wasn't clear to you why what's going on between all those repositories and how they related to each other. So 2 seconds about how Bintray works. This is a distribution platform, and you can think about it as your own download center. So you have a software, you need to be able to provide it to your users, and you need to build a download center for it. Here we have one that we give for free for any kind of open source project, so you can just use it. Now, the interesting and I believe revolutionary concept in Bintray is the idea of linking packages between repositories. You can include or ask to be included for your package inside another package. And there are a number of scenarios why would you do it. So first scenario is I developed something and nobody knows me, but you, Peter, have a very popular repository. And people use your repository, they go there to discover new stuff. And I'm asking you, would you be so kind to include my package in your repository so people will know about it? This is kind of what we saw in the beginning that the usage will be, but then we discovered that the truly powerful feature of inclusions is for the pluggable software providers. For example, Gradle, Grails, Griffon, Lazybones, or any other project that uses plugins. Because these give you the perfect win-win situation when the plugin author has its own space, its own private repo, and the ownership of the plugins, and on the other hand, with the inclusion mechanism, the provider of the platform can have all the packages of the plugins included inside the platform itself. And this is exactly how you use it for Lazybones. If I want to write my own template, I will do it inside my repository, and then I will ask you to be included. You will check that it actually makes sense and it's a good template, and then boom, the templates repository have my template in it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So
and it's similar, it's the mechanism Grails would use if it had been there when the
when it will be there.
I can't speak to that, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there is a move to Bintray in the future.
Right.
But, yeah.
So it's exactly the same for Grails, of course, and it's exactly the same for Gradle. So the whole idea is you have this build script part of Gradle build when you need to tell Gradle where to find the plugins to build the project with. And it's usually looking very awkward because you repeat usually the same information in the build script part and the build itself. For example, where to take the dependencies from. So you're going to repositories over there and repositories over here, and they're usually the same. So with Bintray, you can eliminate all this build script part altogether because you can have a canonical repo of all the Gradle plugins, and just by applying a plugin by its ID, Gradle will know where to find it because there is a canonical repo. The problem with canonical repos usually is how the stuff gets into it. But with the inclusion mechanism, it's very, very simple because the developer of the plugin develops it in its own private repo and then just links it to the canonical repo of Gradle.
Yeah. So I mean, that bit entirely makes sense. I didn't. What I wasn't sure about was why they need to be linked into JCenter in that particular case as
Well,
well.
JCenter is it's like a canonical repo for all the open source and public jars, right? So you might still want to have your build script part with a JCenter repository in it, and it's very easy to add JCenter as a repository. You don't need to provide any URLs or something. You just go JCenter, and Gradle knows what JCenter is. So it's kind of, I wouldn't say it's for backwards compatibility, but it's for compatibility for different usages. So you can go and say, give me a plugin by ID, or you can say, give me a plugin by name from JCenter, and it should work the same. So, but with linkage, those duplications are actually free because they are only references to the original package which resides in the repository of the developer of the plugin. So it could be linked to 2 repositories or 20 repositories, it doesn't matter.
Mm. Yeah. Okay, thanks for the explanation. And speaking of Bintray in the generality, I mean, you gave an explanation. I love to say that Bintray is kind of the GitHub of binaries. For us Java developers, it's all about jar files. But I gather, is Bintray doing Debian packages and RPM packages as well?
Yeah, so at the moment we support 3 packaging systems. Actually, we support any packaging system, but we have a special treatment for files in Maven metadata, RPM metadata, and Debian metadata. Additional packaging system supports will come soon, and they will be nice. Saying that, almost everything can be hosted now as a generic repo, as a generic generic type of files, and we have examples for npm packages, for Windows installers, for what's not, zip files, of course, and whatever.
Okay. And has Bintray, I mean, I think Bintray is fantastic. As you said, I use it for lazy bones, and it makes life a lot easier. I mean, it's just great that people can publish to their own private repos, and then you just link in. You don't have to publish their stuff to your own repo. But I've just been wondering, I think it's great. I was just wondering, is it sort of matching your expectations, exceeding your expectations in terms of take-up, numbers of people using it, the expressions of interest, etc.?
Yeah, so the adoption has been amazing, and it's keep going. Actually, it makes it a little bit hard to us to develop new features, even because in terms of supporting this tremendous amount of packages coming in, and the usages that we didn't see and we didn't expect, and we just discover how people use Bintray. It's been amazing. It's a real. It's catching fire. It's getting like a rolling snowball, and we're happy to see it. We're happy to see this. Something that Yoav, our CTO, thought about a couple of years ago. Something that suddenly goes big, and more and more communities, not only developers, joining. So all the Spring framework is now on Bintray, Groovy is now on Bintray, and Gradle, hopefully Grails are joining as well. All this part of the community, but also others. So we have a relatively big Ruby ecosystem by itself inside Bintray, etc., etc. So it's not only the Groovy ecosystem that love this product, and it looks good. We're going to reveal our premium packages very, very soon. So you will be able to host not only the open source, and you won't be limited to any amount of space, and you will be able to get right authentication and authorization to your customers. That's the natural next step, because people actively asked for it. They love the open source, but they can't put their stuff out there, but they still want to use Bintray. So yes, the interest is huge.
Yeah, I imagine like people will be pushing their builds to the cloud, with things like CloudBees and the like, and of course GitHub make a lot of their money, I believe, off private repositories. So yeah, as you say, it's kind of a natural evolution of the platform. So yeah, it's great to hear that's doing really well, and yeah, look forward to Grail's plugins repository moving to Bintray in a not too distant future. Maybe Grail's 3. Who knows?
Yeah, as I understand, the biggest obstacle is actually in the capacity on side of Gradle committers. They need to build an infrastructure for that to get able to retrieve the plugins, etc. And they are so overwhelmed with Grails 3, they just don't
Yeah,
have the.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
it'll be a fair bit of work. So, are you kind of expecting JCenter to replace, in effect, Maven Central?
So the story with Maven Central is relatively simple, and between us, it's not the best repository that you can dream of. So it's a pile of jar files, and you look at it, and you know nothing about jar file out there. So if you looked for something and you find this jar file as a result of going from the content to the file, it makes sense for you. But going to to Maven Central just to browse around and learn about new libraries doesn't make any sense. Just a pile of file. Doesn't have any metadata. Everybody can push whatever they like to it. This system of signing with a keeper, with private keeper, doesn't make any sense because I can pretend I'm Peter Ledbrook and push whatever I like, and it will just work because all I need to do is generate keeper with your name and email address, and I'm Imposer. So the only good thing about Maven Central is the fact that it's baked inside Maven. It's good for Maven users. They don't need to do anything. It just works.
Mm.
And it's interesting how the world is now has two let's say two communities. So we have this Maven world that works with Maven Central out of the box, and the adoption of using JCenter as a repository there is of course slower because when you need to do something in order to override Maven Central, which just works, most of the people won't do it. But all the other build tools, being it old as Ivy or Anton Ivy, or new and modern as Gradle and SBT, they all have the same level of support for Maven Central and for JCenter. So in Gradle, you can write Maven Central or you can write JCenter as a one-liner to get a repository. The same thing is going to be released in the next version of SBT, hopefully, and in the next version of Ivy. So it's like Maven and all the rest. And Maven has a huge market share. Until that changes, Maven Central is there. The good news are you actually don't have to suffer with uploading to Maven Central stuff, because this is actually a very awkward and painful process. Instead, you can go to Bintray and push your stuff from Bintray to Central in a click of a button. So you can benefit from both worlds.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that, so that's very cool actually. So you
Just
don't
look
have
for
to.
the dinosaur logo, and you will know that this is about Maven Central
Yeah.
in Bintray UI.
Cool. So, I mean, I'm actually interested in JCenter or Bintray in general, also because you guys must be serving a lot of binaries. I mean, how much bandwidth do you guys need?
If I remember right, the numbers, let me just check the last numbers that I have, and they are a little bit outdated by themselves. We are talking about terabytes of data. Let me just find some number that will be more, something that we can rely on. Yeah, here we go. Let's see what it says. Yeah, it's a 2.4 billion requests a month.
Right. Not too shabby then.
But
So,
we still have plenty of capacity to give. Yes.
are you running on Amazon or private data
Uh,
center or?
no, we actually we use SoftLayer as our provider, and it was after still using Amazon for Artifactory. It was kind of a lesson learned that probably we won't want a new product to run as Amazon as well.
Okay.
They are big, and they are, they start to act like a little bit of, you know big guys.
A dominant player, yes.
Yeah, and that affects
As the
serviceability.
monopoly provider, yes. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, it'd be interesting to see, whether Google can make inroads, whether Microsoft with Azure can make inroads as well.
Yeah, so we went
So,
to SoftLayer, and then IBM bought it, and now we are really not sure how to.
right. But it's kind of a unique problem that you guys have in, having that much data that you need to handle, that you need to.
Yeah, the binary storage is huge. On the other side,
Yeah.
we use checksum storage, checksum-based storage. So our deduplication saves a lot. That's for sure.
Okay, that's cool. So I really just wanted to finish up the interview with one question, which is there going to be a life beyond POMs? Are we stuck with them, or do you think that we're going to evolve beyond them? Because they're a poor representation of binary data and their dependencies and the like, I think.
Yeah. So as long as you can separate the metadata about an artifact and the script of how to build it, I think that POM as a metadata declaration is bearable. So if it only uses for stating the dependencies and stating the artifact ID, that's okay. The problem with POM, in my perspective, is the huge build part. Because build part is when you're writing your build script in XML. And this is the real pain. So take Gradle, for example. Gradle does this separation. So you have all your script of how you build it, and you commit it with your sources, because this is actually the instruction of how to build your source, and then you deploy a binary file with the POM XML, which only has the information about the binary itself, ID, etc., and the dependencies that it should bring with it. And for that, I think I'm okay with it, although probably it could be better formats. But taking into consideration how popular is it, I think I can live with POM as a metadata provider only, but of course not for the instructions of how to build the sources.
Okay, so you think yeah, I mean that's one of the biggest issues. But I've heard comments that the POM format itself is rather limiting. It doesn't have a rich vocabulary to describe the dependencies of what is required to use a particular.
The idea of having
artifact.
three scopes, there are actually 5 scopes, but 2 of them are totally unusable. So the idea of limiting the artifacts in 3 hard-coded scopes is, of course, insane and very, very limited.
And the packaging types, I think, yeah. I guess packaging type's okay, but it's
packaging types is the string, so you can express whatever you like with it, but the scopes are.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate though, because we had 2 packaging types for Grail's plugins. I think one is zip and the other is Grail's plugin.
Yeah.
I mean, because POMs still have that link to Maven, I think that's also a problem.
With Gradle it solves quite nicely, because you don't have to have one artifact per project, so you can add this metadata as a classifier. You can add it as an addition to ID, to a name, or you can add it as a packaging type. I think that the problem is packaging type because it's both the extension of the file and an actual type, and then it goes crazy because Gradle plugin shouldn't be extension, but usually packaging is the extension of the file. So
yeah. Well, hopefully. I think Artifactory allows you to add arbitrary metadata as well, and I think Bintray does as well. So
Of course.
it'd be interesting to see whether any standards evolve from that with sort of a richer vocabulary. So anyway, sorry to cut you off there, but yeah, thank you very much, Baruch, for
I can go
joining
for
me.
hours, and I will be. Thank you for having me, and I will be more than happy to join you for once more when you feel like chatting, without any purpose for a very long time about technologies that we love.
Look forward to it. So, I mean, where can people catch up with you in the near future? Are you going to any conferences?
Yeah, there are a lot. We're going to OSCON, and we have talks there, me and Yoav, and the GradeConf US, of course.
Okay,
I'm
cool.
looking forward to this conference, and we will have the Puzzlers talk that, as I understood, was a huge success in GradeConf Europe. It's a very funny one, and Java one, of course, next, and what's not.
Okay, Spring 1.2GX?
Yeah, of course, and Spring 1.2GX
And
before
Spring
Java 1.
Yeah. Cool. So, yeah, if I don't catch you at GradeConf US, probably Spring 1.2GX. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you once again. So that's it for this episode. Look for another one in the not too distant future in a few weeks. Don't have any interviews lined up yet. May be able to grab somebody after this one. I think if we can grab somebody from the Gradle team, that would be cool. So we'll see what we can do. As usual, if you have any feedback or proposals for news and interviews, just send it to me on Twitter at @pledbrook, or email me at p.ledbrook@cacoethers.co.uk. If you don't know how to spell cacoethers, don't worry. Just do a Google search for my name, and I'm pretty much the first full page of results. So it's not easy to track me. It's not hard to track me down. So thank you very much for listening, and hope to catch you next time. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.